Frederick Douglass. I was born in Tuckahoe near Hillsborough and about 12 miles from Easton in Talbot County, Maryland. I have no accurate knowledge of my age, never having seen any authentic records containing it. By far the larger part of the slaves known as a little of their ages as horses know of theirs, and it is the wish of most masters within my knowledge to keep their slaves thus ignorant. I do not remember to have ever met a slave who could tell of his birthday. They seldom come nearer to it than planting time, harvest time, cherry time, springtime, or fall time. A want of information concerning my own was a source of unhappiness to me even during childhood. The white children could tell their ages. I could not tell why I ought to be deprived of the same privilege. I was not allowed to make any inquiries of my masters concerning it. He deemed all such inquiries on the part of a slave improper and impertinent, and evidence of a restless spirit. The nearest estimate I can give makes me now about 27 and 28 years of age. I come to this from hearing from my master sometime during 1835. I was about 17 years old. My mother was named Harriet Bailey. She was the daughter of Isaac and Betsy Bailey. They both colored and quite dark. My mother was of a darker complexion than either of my grandmother or grandfather. My father was a white man. He was admitted to be such by all I ever heard speak of my parentage. The opinion was also whispered that my master was my father, but of the correctness of this opinion I knew nothing. The means of knowing was withheld from me. My mother and I was separated when I was but an infant, before I knew her as my mother. It is a common custom in the part of Maryland from which I ran away to part children from their mothers at a very early age. Frequently, before the child has reached its 12th month, its mother is taken from it and hired out on some farm a considerable distance off, and the child is placed under the care of an old woman too old for field labor. For what this separation is done, I do not know, unless it is to be hither the development of the child affections towards its mother, and to blunt and destroy the natural affection of the mother for the child. This is the inevitable result. I never saw my mother, to know her as such, more than 4 or 5 times in my life, and each of this time was a very short in duration, and at night she was hired by a Mr. Stewart who lived about 12 miles from my home. She made her journeys to see me in the night, traveling the whole distance on foot, and after the performance of her day's work. She was a field hand, and a whipping is the penalty of not being in the field at sunrise, unless a slave has special permission from his or her master to the contrary, a permission which they seldom get, and one that gives to him that gives it the proud name of being a kind master. I do not recollect of ever seeing my mother by the light of a day. She was with me in the night. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep, but long before I wake she was gone. Very little communication ever took place between us. Death soon ended what little we could have while she lived, and with it her hardships and suffering. She died when I was about 7 years old. One of my master's farm near Lee Mills. I was not allowed to be present during her illness and at her death or burial. She was long gone before I knew anything about it, never having enjoyed to any considerable extent her soothing presence, her tender and watchful care. I received the tidings of her death with much the same emotion I should have probably felt at the death of a stranger. Called thus suddenly away, she left me without the slightest intimation of who my father was. The whisper that my master was my father may or may not be true, and true or false it is of but of little consequences to my purpose, while the fact remains in all its glorious odiousness that slaveholder have ordained, and by the law established, that the children of slave women shall in cases follow the condition of their mothers, and this is done too obviously to administer to their own lusts and make a gratification of their wicked desires profitable as well as pleasurable. For by this cunning arrangement, the slaveholder, in cases not a few, sustained to his slave the double relation of master and a father. I knew of such cases, and it was worthy of remark that such slaves invariably suffer greater hardships and have more to be content with than others. They are, in the first place, a constant offense to their mistress. She is ever disposed to find faults with them. They can seldom do anything to please her. She is never better pleased than when she sees them under the leash, especially when she suspects her husband of showing to his mulatto children favors which he withholds from his black slaves. The master is frequently compelled to sell this class of his slave out of deference to the feeling of his white wife, and cruel as the deed may strike any one to be, for a man to sell his own children to human fleshmongers, it is often the dictate of humanity for him to do so, for unless he does this, he must not only whip them himself, but must stand by and see one white son ties up his brother, of few shades darker complexion than himself, and play the gory lash to his naked back. And if he lisp one word of disapproval, it is set down to his paternal partiality and only makes a bad matter worse, both for himself and the slave. I have two masters. My first master's name was Anthony. I do not remember his first name. He was generally called Captain Anthony, a title which I presume he acquired by sailing a craft on a cheap sick bay. He was not considered a rich slaveholder. He owned 2 or 3 farms and about 30 slaves. His farms and slaves were under the care of an overseer. The overseer's name was Plumber. Mr. Plumber was a miserable drunkard, a profane swearer, and a savage monster. He always went armed with a cowskin and a heavy cudgel. I have known him to cut and slash the woman's head so horribly that even master would be enraged at his cruelty and would threaten to whip him if he did not mind himself. Master, however, was not a humane slaveholder. It required extraordinary barbarity on the part of an overseer to affect him. He was a cruel man, hardened by a long life of slaveholding. He would at times seem to take great pleasure in whipping a slave. I have often been awakened at the dawn of the day by the most heartrending shrieks of an own aunt of mine, whom he used to tie up to a joist and whip upon her naked back till she was literally covered with blood. No words, no tears, no prayers from his gory victim seemed to move his iron heart from its bloody purpose. The louder she screamed, the harder he whipped, and where the blood ran fastest, there he whipped the longest. He would whip her to make her scream, and whip her to make her hush, and not until overcome by fatigue would he cease to swing the blood-clotted cowskin. It was most terrible spectacle. From my earliest recollection, I date the entertainment of a deep conviction that slavery would not always be able to hold me within its full embrace, and in the darkest hour of my career in slavery, this living world of faith and spirit of hope departed not from me, but remained like ministering angels to cheer me through the gloom. This good spirit was from God, and to Him I offer thanksgiving and praise. So I hope you like the animation. If you like the animation, please do like, share and subscribe to my channel.